First Contact and Fatal Mistakes. The Krax Empire's Supreme Commander Xerx stood before the holographic display, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the soft blue light of Earth's continents below. 3 centuries of unopposed expansion had made the Krax complacent, but none would have guessed their greatest military disaster would begin with such an insignificant world. Primitive nuclear technology, fractured political structure, minimal space presence. First Tactician Ven reported, her secondary arms manipulating the data streams. Standard subjugation protocols should suffice. Xerx's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The Krax had conquered 1,000 worlds with their superior technology and militant efficiency. Earth would be no different. Commence the standard warning broadcast, he ordered. On Earth, the sudden appearance of crystalline vessels in high orbit triggered not panic, but a carefully orchestrated response decades in the making. In the depths of UNDC headquarters beneath the Rocky Mountains, Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen watched the alien ships with calculated interest. They're broadcasting, ma'am, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. Standard threats of submission or annihilation. Very theatrical. Chen smiled. Humanity had long prepared for this moment, knowing they weren't alone in the cosmos. Initiate Protocol Pandora. Let's show our visitors why you should never judge a species by their tech level. The Krax's first warning shot, intended to destroy an uninhabited island, never reached Earth's atmosphere. Instead, it encountered a web of quantum gravitational fields that humanity had reverse-engineered from studying ancient alien ruins on Mars. The energy beam twisted in impossible ways before dissipating harmlessly. Impossible, Ven whispered, checking her readings. Their defensive capabilities exceed all projections. They shouldn't have this technology. A lucky countermeasure, Xerx dismissed. Deploy the first wave. Show them real power. That order would haunt him forever. As the Krax assault ships descended, they encountered not primitive nuclear weapons, but a carefully layered defense grid combining technologies the Krax thought impossible to merge. Gravity wells intersected with quantum fields, creating zones where the laws of physics became suggestions. Autonomous drone swarms moved with impossible coordination, using basic projectile weapons in ways that somehow bypassed advanced shields. The first wave didn't just fail, it was systematically dismantled. Humans had spent centuries preparing for this moment, developing countermeasures for technologies they hadn't even encountered yet. Every Krax tactic was met with an innovative defense that shouldn't have been possible with Earth's tech level. But it was the counterattack that truly shocked the Krax. Human ships, crude by their standards, emerged from hidden bases across the solar system. Instead of matching Krax technology, they exploited its weaknesses in ways the Krax had never considered. Magnetic pulse weapons overloaded crystalline systems. Gravity slings turned space debris into relativistic weapons. Even their communications were weaponized, flooding Krax networks with data patterns that caused their quantum processors to crash. They're not fighting like primitives, Ven realized too late. They're fighting like humans. As the first day of combat ended, nearly a third of the Krax invasion fleet was disabled or destroyed. Supreme Commander Xerx faced an uncomfortable truth. They had completely misjudged humanity. This wasn't a primitive species to be conquered. This was something new. A civilization that had developed in isolation, taking unique technological paths the Krax had never considered. The humans hadn't just prepared for alien contact, they had prepared for alien warfare. Every primitive technology they possessed had been refined and weaponized in ways that defied conventional military doctrine. Their apparent technological gaps weren't weaknesses, they were deliberate choices, paths not taken in favor of innovations the Krax couldn't counter. As Xerx ordered a tactical retreat to regroup, Admiral Chen's words were broadcast across all frequencies. Consider this a warning. We are humanity. We don't need your technology to defeat it. Return with force, and you'll discover just how creative we can be. The message was clear. The galaxy had just discovered something terrifying. A species that turned technological disadvantage into strategic superiority. The war that would make humanity a legend of fear had begun. Continued in next parts. The Innovation War. The Crack's High Command facility on Centauri Prime buzzed with agitation. Supreme Commander Xerxes faced the assembled War Council, his crystalline form dulled with stress. Our initial assault on Earth failed because we underestimated them. We won't make that mistake again. Dr. Maya Patel stood in her laboratory beneath Mount Kilimanjaro, surrounded by salvaged Crack's technology. Holographic displays showed the crystalline structure of alien alloys, quantum field generators, and faster-than-light drive components. But unlike her alien counterparts, she wasn't trying to understand how they worked. She was finding ways to make them fail spectacularly. Their technology is like a perfect symphony, she explained to Admiral Chen over a secure quantum link. Every component precisely tuned, every system optimized for maximum efficiency. And that's their weakness. They've never had to think about what happens when you deliberately detune the orchestra. The next wave of Crack ships arrived with overwhelming force, 5 times the size of the first fleet. They expected to find Earth cowering. Instead, they found innovation. Human ships now carried what they called quantum scramblers, crude but effective devices that created localized areas where the fundamental forces of physics behaved unpredictably. Crack's weapons, calibrated for mathematical perfection, couldn't adapt to zones where their own laws of physics were being rewritten on the fly. This is barbaric. First Tactician Ven protested as another squadron of Crack ships spiraled out of control, their perfect formations shattered by human chaos theory applied to space combat. They're not even trying to match our technology. They're just breaking it. That was exactly the point. While the Cracks had spent millennia perfecting their technology, humans had spent centuries learning to improvise, adapt, and overcome. Every primitive solution they deployed was the result of countless generations asking, what if? And why not? The Cracks' shield harmonics, designed to repel energy weapons, proved surprisingly vulnerable to kinetic impacts at precisely calculated angles. Their quantum communications network, supposedly unhackable, couldn't handle being flooded with cat videos and recursive memes. Their AI combat systems, programmed for optimal efficiency, crashed when faced with human tactics that prioritize chaos over perfection. They're not fighting the way they're supposed to. A Cracks analyst reported, mandibles clicking in frustration. Their ships deliberately enter asteroid fields. They use their own drive failures as weapons. They're treating space combat like some sort of deranged improvisational performance. Admiral Chen watched from her command center as another Cracks formation fell into carefully laid trap. That's because we're not trying to be better at their type of warfare, she explained to her staff. We're making them fight our way. The turning point came when Dr. Patel's team unveiled their masterpiece, the probability inverter. By studying Crack's quantum drives, they'd discovered a way to temporarily reverse cause and effect in localized areas. Crack ships would fire their weapons, only to find their shots had somehow hit them 5 seconds before they pulled the trigger. It doesn't make sense. Ven screamed as another battle group was lost to what humans were casually calling tactical time paradoxes. Their technology is inferior. Their methods are insane. This should not be possible. But that was humanity's true strength. They didn't care what should be possible. They simply found ways to make the impossible work. While the Cracks fought according to millennia of doctrine and precision, humans treated space warfare like a playground for mad science. As the second Cracks fleet retreated in disarray, Supreme Commander Xerxes faced an uncomfortable revelation. The galaxy's military doctrine was based on technological superiority, on each species trying to climb the same ladder of progress. Humanity hadn't just refused to climb that ladder. They'd knocked it over and built a roller coaster instead. The war was far from over, but its nature had fundamentally changed. The Cracks would have to abandon their doctrine of technological supremacy or face extinction at the hands of a species that turned scientific laws into suggestions and combat doctrine into modern art. Continued in next parts. Operation Impossible. In a hardened bunker deep beneath Europa's ice, Admiral Chen faced the assembled leaders of Earth's defense forces. The holographic display showed the Crax Empire's home systems, previously thought unreachable by human forces. "They think their core worlds are safe," Chen said, her voice steady despite the audacity of what she was about to propose. "They think we lack the technology to strike at their heart. That assumption is their final mistake." Dr. Patel stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with the particular madness that came from 3 straight weeks of coffee-fueled innovation. "We've cracked it," she announced, bringing up a simulation of her latest creation. "We're calling it the Infinity Mirror Drive." The simulation showed a human ship surrounded by fractalized spacetime, each layer reflecting and amplifying quantum probability fields until reality itself seemed to shatter. By using their own quantum technology against them in ways they never imagined possible, we can create a cascade of temporal echoes. Each echo will carry a copy of our fleet into their space through paths they can't predict or intercept. "You want to break the universe to win a war?" General Santos asked, his voice a mixture of horror and admiration. "No," Dr. Patel corrected with a grin. "We want to convince the universe to bend its own rules for us. There's a difference." Operation Impossible began 3 days later. The Crax detected no human fleet movements, no preparation for attack. Instead, their first warning came when reality itself began to hiccup around their primary shipyards. Human vessels emerged from tiers in spacetime, each one a probability echo of the original fleet. The Crax's perfect defenses, designed to stop ships approaching through normal space, were useless against vessels that technically existed in several places at once. "This defies all known laws of physics." Supreme Commander Zirex raged as reports of simultaneous attacks across 3 star systems flooded in. "They can't be doing this." But they were. Human ships, powered by Dr. Patel's Infinity Mirror Drives, phased between multiple quantum states, making them nearly impossible to target. Their weapons, crude by Crax standards, had been modified to fire through probability spaces where the laws of physics had been politely asked to look the other way. The human assault wasn't just an attack, it was a fundamental rejection of what the Crax thought possible. Ships appeared inside planetary defense shields by temporarily convincing causality they had always been there. Weapons fire curved around quantum barriers by taking shortcuts through possibility space. In the command center of the UES Pandora, Captain Sarah Martinez watched as her fleet's impossible tactics shattered the Crax's perfect defenses. "The thing about impossible," she commented to her XO, "is that it's just a word for something nobody's been crazy enough to try yet." The Crax tried to adapt, but their responses were bound by doctrine and logic. They couldn't comprehend, let alone counter, human ships that treated the laws of physics like optional guidelines. Their perfect formations and calculated responses meant nothing against an enemy that could attack from literally any point in probability space. Dr. Patel's voice crackled over the quantum comm as another Crax defense platform fell to reality-bending human tactics. "The beautiful thing about quantum mechanics," she explained, "is that if you look at it right, everything is simultaneously impossible and inevitable. We're just helping the universe make up its mind about which one it wants to be." As Operation Impossible unfolded across the Crax home systems, Supreme Commander Zirex faced a terrifying realization. The humans hadn't just found a way to match Crax technology. They'd found a way to make it do things its creators had never imagined possible. They weren't fighting with superior weapons. They were fighting with superior imagination. The operation's success sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Crax's defenses. They'd rewritten the rules of what was possible in warfare. The message was clear. No technology, no matter how advanced, was safe from human ingenuity. Continued in next parts. The breaking point. The Grand Council chamber of the Crax Empire, once a symbol of unwavering power, now echoed with the sounds of argument and fear. Supreme Commander Zirex stood before the assembled leadership, his crystalline form dulled and cracked from the strain of continuous defeats. The humans, he began, his voice carrying none of its former certainty, are not merely defeating us. They are unmaking everything we thought we knew about warfare and technology. The latest battle footage played above the council table. Human ships phased through reality like ghosts, their infinity mirror drives creating cascading waves of probability that turned space itself into a weapon. Cracks' defensive formations, once the pride of their military doctrine, crumbled before tactics that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. Our latest analysis suggests they're not even using our stolen technology correctly. First Tactician Ven reported, her voice trembling. They're deliberately using it wrong, finding ways to make it fail that somehow work better than our perfected methods. In Earth's combined military command, Admiral Chen watched the Cracks' growing desperation with grim satisfaction. They still don't understand, she told her staff. They think technology has rules that must be followed. We know better. We know every rule is just another puzzle to solve. Dr. Patel's latest innovation demonstrated this perfectly. By studying captured Cracks' quantum processors, her team had discovered that the aliens' computer systems were too perfect, too logical. They had created a virus that didn't attack the systems. Instead, it introduced small elements of chaos, tiny quantum uncertainties that grew until the perfectly calibrated machines literally couldn't process their own existence. Think of it like giving a computer an existential crisis, she explained to the War Council. Their systems are designed to find perfect solutions. We're teaching them that perfection doesn't exist. The effects were devastating. Across the Cracks Empire, military installations began to fail as their own technology turned against them. Ships refused to fire, believing they had already fired in another quantum state. Defense systems shut down, having calculated that they simultaneously existed and didn't exist. This isn't warfare, a Cracks elder screamed during an emergency session. This is madness. They're not trying to defeat our technology. They're driving it insane. But madness, as humanity had long known, sometimes held a logic all its own. While the Cracks struggled to maintain their crumbling perfection, human forces pressed their advantage with increasingly bizarre innovations. They developed what they called quantum uncertainty torpedoes, weapons that existed in a state of quantum flux until observed, making them impossible to intercept because they technically hadn't been fired until they hit their targets. Captain Martins led a strike force equipped with probability mirrors, devices that reflected the Cracks' own quantum field signatures back at them, creating feedback loops that made their ships fight themselves across multiple dimensions of possibility. The beauty of it, she explained to her crew, is that we're not actually breaking any laws of physics. We're just showing physics some interesting new possibilities it hadn't considered before. The breaking point came during the Battle of Proxima Centauri. A Cracks fleet, desperately trying to maintain formation against human reality-bending attacks, received contradictory orders from their quantum command network. The perfectly logical machines, faced with commands that existed in quantum superposition, simply stopped. In that moment, as ships hung motionless in space, their crews watching in horror as human vessels danced through impossible maneuvers around them, the Cracks Empire faced a terrible truth. They had built their civilization on the assumption that the universe followed strict, understandable rules. Humanity had shown them that the universe was far stranger and more flexible than they had ever imagined. Supreme Commander Xerex, watching his empire's technology turn against itself, finally understood. The humans hadn't just developed better weapons or tactics. They had embraced the chaos inherent in the universe itself, turning uncertainty and impossibility into their greatest strengths. The war had reached its psychological turning point. The Cracks, with their rigid adherence to perfection and order, simply couldn't adapt to an enemy that treated the fundamental laws of reality as mere suggestions. Continued in next parts. Legacy of Fear. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, its chamber filled with representatives from 1,000 species. The topic: how to deal with humanity in the aftermath of their devastating victory over the Cracks Empire. On the central display, Footage played of the war's final battle. Human ships, their infinity mirror drives bending reality itself, surrounded the last Cracks fortress world. But instead of attacking, they simply waited, their presence alone enough to force the once mighty empire's surrender. The humans, the Arcturian ambassador began, their crystalline form vibrating with anxiety, have not simply defeated the Cracks. They have fundamentally changed our understanding of what is possible in warfare. In Earth's victory celebration, Admiral Chen stood before the United Nations, her uniform decorated with medals no one had imagined would exist a year ago. "We didn't win because we were stronger," she explained to the assembled leaders of humanity. "We won because we refused to accept limitations that others took for granted." The impact of humanity's victory rippled across the galaxy. Species that had lived in fear of the Cracks for millennia now faced a new kind of fear, not of overwhelming force or superior technology, but of human ingenuity. Reports spread of human innovations that shouldn't be possible. Ships that could convince physics to look the other way. Weapons that existed in quantum superposition until they struck their targets. Defense systems that treated probability like putty to be molded. Dr. Patel's research team had become legendary, their laboratory a pilgrimage site for alien scientists trying to understand how humans had done the impossible. "The funny thing," she told a group of visiting xenophysicists, "is that we're not actually breaking any fundamental laws. We're just showing the universe that there are more interesting ways to interpret them." The Cracks surrender document itself became a symbol of the new order. Written simultaneously in standard text and quantum-encoded probability states, it acknowledged defeat not just in this reality, but in all possible realities where the war might have occurred. Supreme Commander Xerex, now tasked with rebuilding his shattered empire, gave a final address to his people. "We lost," he admitted, his once proud crystalline form dimmed with humility, not because the humans were more advanced, but because they dared to imagine possibilities we had never considered. They showed us that our greatest weakness was our belief in our own superiority. The galaxy's military doctrines underwent rapid revision. Species that had spent millennia developing perfect technology now found themselves studying human history, trying to understand how a supposedly primitive race had turned imperfection into an advantage. The term human warfare entered the galactic lexicon, describing any tactic that succeeded by deliberately ignoring conventional wisdom. But perhaps the most profound change was psychological. The galaxy had always operated on the assumption that technological advancement followed a predictable path, that species could be categorized by their level of development. Humanity had shattered that assumption, proving that innovation wasn't about following established rules, it was about finding new ways to bend them. Ambassador Reeves, addressing the Galactic Council from Earth's newly established embassy, summed up humanity's new role in the cosmos. "We come in peace," she declared, a slight smile playing at her lips. "But we suggest you remember what happened to the last empire that mistook our creativity for weakness. We don't want to fight, but if forced, we will always find a way to win, even if we have to rewrite the rules of reality itself to do it." The war that had made humanity a legend of fear was over, but its impact would echo through the centuries. In the dark spaces between stars, species whispered stories of the humans, the race that had turned quantum physics into an art form, that had made uncertainty itself a weapon, that had proven that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply the audacity to ask, "Why not?" The galaxy would never be the same. And in the laboratories and shipyards of Earth, humans continued to innovate, to imagine, to push the boundaries of what others thought possible. After all, they had already changed the rules of warfare. Why not see what other impossible things they could make reality? The end.